Hi, I'm Felipa, and I'm reading this Bible every single day for the next year, and I will be done in September of 2026. So today I am on chapter 9. I'm in Judges, and we have Abimelech kills his brothers and becomes king. So basically, continuing on from Gideon, who was helping make sure that Israel ended up being saved from a bunch of the nations and from all of these other people taking over Israel and the promised land because Israel was sinning against God, not following God's commandments, and God was punishing them. And we ended yesterday on basically Israel, the people of Israel doing the same thing and returning to idolatry and sinning against God. So now Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, which right here says, namely Gideon, ends up essentially going out and fighting a lot of nations, basically to overthrow them in the name of Israel. And we end up in a section where he's essentially killed. There's a little bit of a section of a couple of more judges that arose in Israel. Nothing too much there. God here says God chides the people for their trust in idols. And he actually gets so mad that in chapter 10, verses 13 and 14, he says, "Yet ye have forsaken me and served other gods. Wherefore I will deliver you no more. Go and cry unto the gods which ye have chosen. Let them deliver you in the time of your tribulation." So God's basically saying, like, I'm sick and tired of you guys repeating the same story over and over. I save you, you sin. I save you, you sin. So now go pray to these false gods and figure it out. And so essentially, we end up getting into this section here where there's a covenant between Jephthah and Gilead, and he was a mighty man of valor. He ended up defeating some nations and basically says to God, "Deliver these nations into my hand, and I will make a sacrifice unto you." And so basically, God delivers all of these nations into Jephthah's hand. And when he returns home, essentially he says, the first thing that I see, in a sense, like I will sacrifice, or I make a vow to sacrifice the first thing that I encounter. And it ends up being his daughter. And I looked into this information because I was a little bit confused about this part, but essentially the research that I looked at said that, he was upset that essentially he asked God to help him defeat these armies and these nations, which God helped him do. But then he had also said, I'm grateful and I vow to make a sacrifice like in your name. And it ended up being his daughter. And it says here that she asked her dad essentially to send her away for 2 months, where she went to bewail her virginity upon the mountains. And then she came back according to his vow. And so this section, when I did some research on it, basically said that there's kind of two interpretations: either that she was literally sacrificed by her father because of God's support in helping her dad destroy all these nations, but then also another interpretation of this is that actually she just forsake like her virginity, in the sense of she was forever a virgin, so she didn't have family, she didn't have children, she didn't have a husband, and she spent her whole life being devoted and faithful to God. So there's those kinds of like two different interpretations. And then basically, we have a couple of more judges, and that is it for today. Tomorrow, I'm on Israel conquered by the Philistines, and I am almost done the book of Judges. So this whole section seems to really center around how the people of Israel keep sinning. Judges and kind of saviors end up kind of coming up in history, and they try to help the people of Israel, and they do. And then the children of Israel, regress again and sin again. And so it's this pattern throughout this whole section. So I will be back tomorrow for day 52 of reading this wonderful Bible. So see you then.